Right now, in a remote village in Papua New Guinea, a man is carrying a pig to his neighbor's house. He is not selling it. There is no price, no receipt, no agreement written anywhere. But both men know exactly what is happening, and both men know that somewhere down the line, the debt will be repaid. Not necessarily in pigs, not necessarily soon, but it will be repaid. Because in a world without money, your reputation for repaying is the only currency that actually matters. This system is not primitive. It is not a step on the way to something more sophisticated. It is one of the most complex social technologies humans have ever developed. And it is older than language, older than farming, older than any city that has ever existed on Earth. Let's start with what trade actually is. Before money, before barter, before any formal system of exchange, there was something simpler and more powerful. Anthropologists call it generalized reciprocity. You give without expecting immediate return. The return comes later, from the same person or from someone else entirely, in a form that cannot be predicted in advance. This is how hunter-gatherer societies have operated for 300,000 years. A Hadza hunter who kills a large animal does not sell the meat. He does not trade it for something of equivalent value. He distributes it to his family first, then to the wider camp, then to neighboring groups if the kill is large enough. He receives nothing in return that evening, but he has made deposits in a social bank that has no ledger, no interest rate, and no closing time. When he comes home empty-handed next week, and most days he does, the camp feeds him anyway. When his child is sick and he cannot gather, someone brings food to his shelter. When he is old and cannot hunt, the group does not let him starve. The return on generosity is not immediate, it is insurance. But generalized reciprocity only works inside a group small enough that everyone knows everyone. The moment you need to exchange with a stranger, someone from a different camp, a different valley, a different language group, the system breaks down. You cannot extend credit to someone you will never see again. You cannot trust that a stranger's reputation for repayment will follow them across 100 miles of forest. This is where trade begins, real trade. The exchange of specific objects with specific people outside your immediate group. And the oldest evidence of it is not grain, not tools, not livestock. It is shells. Archaeologists have found marine shells at inland sites across Africa dating back 160,000 years. Some of these shells were found 500 miles from the nearest coastline. They were not carried there by water. They were carried there by people, passed from hand to hand across generations, moving slowly inland through networks of exchange that connected communities who may never have met each other directly. A shell 500 miles from the sea is not food. It is not a weapon. It has no immediate survival value. What it has is signal value. It proves connection. It proves access to networks that extend beyond the immediate horizon. Wearing a shell that came from the coast when you live in the middle of a continent says something about who you know and how far your relationships reach. This is not decoration. This is a credit rating. The mechanics of early trade were built on something researchers call balanced reciprocity. Unlike generalized reciprocity, where you give and wait, balanced reciprocity involves a roughly equivalent exchange happening within a defined time frame. You give me obsidian from your mountain. I give you dried fish from my river. We both leave with something we could not produce ourselves. We both profit. The oldest known trade route we have evidence of runs between obsidian quarries in what is now Turkey and coastal communities in what is now Israel. The obsidian moved roughly 500 miles. The date is approximately 14,000 years ago. Obsidian is volcanic glass. It fractures into edges sharper than surgical steel. For a community that needed cutting tools and had no obsidian source nearby, it was worth traveling enormous distances to acquire. For the communities near the quarry, it was worth acquiring whatever the coastal people had that they lacked. Both sides understood something that would not be formally articulated for another 13,000 years. Comparative advantage. You produce what you are best positioned to produce. I produce what I am best positioned to produce. We exchange. Both of us end up better off than if we each tried to produce everything ourselves. Your ancestors were practicing economics before the word existed. But the most sophisticated pre-money trading system ever documented is not about objects at all. It is about knowledge. The Aboriginal Australians developed a trading network across the entire continent, roughly 3 million square miles, that operated continuously for at least 40,000 years. Goods moved across this network: ochre, shells, stone tools, animal pelts. But what also moved, and what researchers now believe was equally or more valuable, was information. Songlines, the navigational and cultural routes that crisscross the continent, were themselves a form of tradable asset. Knowledge of a songline was not given freely, it was exchanged. A community that controlled knowledge of a specific route, a specific water source, a specific sacred site, held something that other communities needed and would trade real goods to access. In a landscape as vast and harsh as the Australian interior, knowing where water was in a drought year was worth more than any physical object. The people who held that knowledge and traded it carefully survived. The people who gave it away freely or kept it too tightly did not. Information was currency. It has always been currency. We just forgot for a while. Then came the problem that generosity and barter could not solve: scale. Once human communities grew past a certain size, once the trading networks expanded past the point where personal reputation could travel, the social bank broke down. You cannot run a generalized reciprocity system with 10,000 people. You cannot remember 10,000 faces, 10,000 histories, 10,000 outstanding debts. Something had to replace personal trust. The first solution was not coins, it was commodities, objects that everyone agreed were valuable, that were durable enough to store, divisible enough to make change, and scarce enough that they could not be manufactured at will. In different parts of the world, different commodities filled this role. Cowrie shells in China and across much of Africa and Asia, cacao beans in Mesoamerica, salt across the ancient Mediterranean and sub-Saharan Africa, cattle across much of sub-Saharan Africa and the ancient Near East, dried fish in Iceland, wampum beads among the indigenous peoples of North America. What these objects had in common was not intrinsic value. Salt is useful, yes, but you cannot eat enough salt to justify carrying it across a continent. What these objects had was agreed value, a community-wide consensus that this object could be exchanged for that service, that quantity of grain, that number of days of labor. This consensus is the invention, not the object itself, the agreement. And once the agreement existed, the behavior it produced looks remarkably familiar. A Sumerian clay tablet from approximately 3000 BC records a transaction in which a worker received payment in silver for a specific quantity of labor. It is the oldest paycheck ever found. The worker's name is unknown, the employer's name is unknown, but the transaction is recorded with the same precision a modern accountant would use. The system your ancestors built to solve the problem of trust between strangers, the problem of exchanging value with people you did not know and might never see again, produced writing. It produced mathematics. It produced the first cities, organized around the management of surplus and exchange. The market did not emerge from civilization. Civilization emerged from the market. Tonight, when you pay for something with a card, a tap, a number transferred between servers, you are running the same program your ancestors were running when they carried a shell 500 miles from the coast. Both of you are solving the same problem. How do I get something I need from someone I do not fully trust, without giving up more than the thing is worth, in a way that leaves both of us willing to do it again? For 300,000 years, the answer was relationship. Then it was reputation. Then it was commodity. Then it was coin. Then it was paper. Then it was number. The problem has never changed, only the token we use to solve it.